Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jacqueline Monteith. I am a science instructional coach with Frontier School Division. We are streaming live this afternoon from the coast of Hudson Bay in Churchill, Manitoba. You will see these big, beautiful windows behind us, and we are right on Hudson Bay, part of the Arctic Ocean. So welcome to Science Near and Far with our expert panel. What's exciting about our location is that right around this time, just yesterday afternoon, there was a big bear walking right outside the complex here, down the beach, along the shoreline. So if we happen to see that today, then you know we're going to be dropping our panel and taking you guys out to the window to check out the action. This afternoon we have an expert panel. We have 5 amazing experts who will be speaking with you, answering your questions, engaging in some teachings, and telling you all about what they do up here in Churchill. But let's remember that this session is very interactive. So as much as we're teaching you, we want to be learning from you. So please make sure you're using the chat feature, saying hello to us, and really participating with information from your local areas and learning about our local area here. Before we get started, I would like to thank all of our partners for making this happen. Of course, we have our Frontier School Division science crew. We also have our right-click technology team. Here we have Bradley and Justin helping us out behind the scenes here with all of our technology needs. We've also got the Duke of Marlborough School, where we are streaming right close to here in the complex in Churchill, and where our students were from in our panel earlier today. I would like to send a big shout out to the Churchill Northern Study Centre, Parks Canada, the Churchill Marine Observatory, University of Manitoba, Winnipeg Park Zoo, and Polar Bears International. So with that, let's get started. All right, Debbie, I'm going to leave it to you to start the introductions here.
Hi everyone, I'm Debbie Armstrong. I work at the University of Manitoba, and I'm up here setting up an atmospheric monitoring system at the Churchill Marine Observatory.
Thank you. Go ahead, Faye.
Hi, my name is Fei Wan. I'm a professor at the University of Manitoba, and I'm also the chief scientist of the Churchill Marine Observatory. So Jacqueline mentioned that just outside from here, you can see the beautiful coastline. And if the camera can catch it, you might even see a glimpse of the Marine Observatory. So.
Thank you. That's pretty exciting, and it's all brand new. So we'll be getting back to some more details about the Marine Observatory. Thank you. KT.
Hi everyone, my name is KT Miller, and I am the Senior Manager of Conservation Communications and Outreach at Polar Bears International, which means I play with a lot of cool cameras and technology. And fun fact about me, until these little Lego guys showed up, I'm pretty sure I was the shortest tundra buggy driver out on the tundra. And we'll talk to you more about Lego Buggy 1 later. I'll pass it over to Dave.
That's a great fact though, KT. I love it. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Dave Alcorn, also working for Polar Bears International and in field operations here in Churchill, and been working in the Arctic for many, many years now. And I think to sort of join KT, I may be the tallest tundra buggy driver who drives tundra buggy number 1. Before
awesome.
Lego.
So we need your Lego figures to be scaled if we're doing this in production, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Arif, go ahead.
Arif Qasim, science coach with Frontier School Division, just next to Jacqueline. I work with students across the province all the time and teachers in outreach programs. So I also play a lot of chess. I like chess.
Arif is a I don't know how you say it, a trophied chess champion?
That's something like that.
Yeah, you're trophied. That's the new way we're going to say it now. Thank you. So it's good to have all of you here. This is a really diverse panel of experts who all play a unique role in what happens here in Churchill. And when we're looking at our theme topic of Science Near and Far, everybody plays a bit of a different role here. So again, now's time to start bringing in your questions and comments for our expert panel, and we'll get right to it. So to start with, we actually have a few hellos. We've got a hello from Taylor School, grade 5 class in Swan River. A hello from Nellie McClung Collegiate, grade 8 in Manitou. And we have a hello from Flin Flon, Many Faces Education Center. So just no pressure, but when we did the shout outs to our student panel this morning, all the students shouted and waved back. So feel free if you feel like giving a big shout out back to our virtual audience. All right, so to start with, what I would like to do is just hear from each of you a little bit about why you're here, what you're doing, and what your overall goals are in terms of science research and using using and studying our local resources. Katie, I'm going to start with you for this one.
Yeah, sure. We are super fortunate. We get to do some very cool work here. We're Polar Bears International, so of course for us it's all about polar bears. So we come spend time in Churchill at lots of different times of year, but the fall is super special. A lot of you may know, but polar bears congregate in this area in the fall, and they're waiting in these special locations where the sea ice tends to freeze first. So Polar Bears International is up here this time of year. We're doing a couple different research projects on bears. A lot of them use really cool cameras and technology. And then we also do a lot of education and outreach. So participating in things like this, and we work a lot from this very cool tundra buggy. This is a Lego model of our buggy, Buggy One. Buggy One has a live streaming camera on it, on the front. And we actually have 4 other live streaming cameras. Polar bears, like a lot of you may know, their greatest threat is loss of their sea ice habitat because of climate warming. So we at Polar Bears International think it's really important to spread awareness, share polar bears with the world, and inspire all of us to learn more about these creatures and in turn protect them.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for that information. Debbie, how about you? You're working with the Churchill Marine Observatory. What are some of your overall goals and what you're doing there, or what you're developing there?
Right, so we're setting up, this research station is really to study oil or oil spills, or how you clean up oil in a spill in the Arctic. And so because there's a lot of ice in the Arctic, it'll drag, if there's a spill, it'll drag the oil into different areas. And so the old way of doing it, where you just had booms, you put out these booms that kind of hold the oil in, you can't really do that when there's ice, because it'll just drag it around. So we're studying how we're going to clean up some of those spills eventually, if they do happen, as well as the chemicals that the oil will release into the atmosphere. And that's what I do. So that's my small portion of that big study, is that I look at chemicals in the atmosphere. So I study any organic contaminants, mercury, different metals, different particulates that you would find in the atmosphere, both in a natural environment and in a contaminated environment.
Amazing, thank you so much. Faye, I'm gonna switch the question up just a little bit. How is the landscape, everything local that we have here in Churchill, how does that complement what you're studying and some of your research goals at the University of Manitoba?
Absolutely. Well, as a professor at the University of Manitoba, my research is primarily interested in contamination, in environmental quality, in the changing climate. So as I started, I was born in China, and in small town China, never imagined I would actually one day be doing research here in this beautiful town of Churchill in northern Manitoba. But most of my research prior to Churchill was actually in the high Arctic, where we see not just the climate change, but also the challenge that the climate change, or the opportunities climate change bring to the community, but also the challenges there. So we've been working in the high Arctic for a good 10-some years, and eventually we came back we actually came south from the high Arctic to Churchill. It's exactly because of the attraction here. Churchill is a great place where we see not just firsthand of climate change, but also we see the opportunities and the challenges. As the only deep water port in the entire North American Arctic. That's true, actually, right? So if you think about some of you are probably familiar with Churchill, our port is not necessarily that deep, but that is still the deepest port of the entire North American Arctic, right? So that's really itself provide this opportunity of ships coming in, right? Cargo ships and so on. And the challenge is, well, with this increasing amount of ship traffic, what are the challenges associated with this? So that's really the main reason that I kind of gradually walked the south from the north to Churchill and started to build this Churchill Marine Observatory. What David just described is only a very small part of what Churchill Marine Observatory is doing. It's not just about oil spill, but also really about the climate change and all the aspects of climate change. For example, the increase of the shipping traffic and the change in the sea ice conditions and polar bear behavior, right? We know all the challenges there. So for the first time in the province of Manitoba, that we're now building this oceanography, the ocean study at the university. Most of you still think Manitoba, or some of us still think Manitoba is an inland, it's an interior province. But we tend to forget that we are actually a coastal province, right? People go to Florida, California to see the ocean. In all reality, it's here. The ocean is right there, right? So that's really kind of the exciting part for my research that I see, that I start to contribute to opening our province to be a true coastal province, to bring ocean up, ocean-related research through Churchill to the entire province and to the country.
Thank you. And I had no idea that we were the deepest port in Arctic North America. That's pretty fascinating.
It is.
Yeah, thank you for that. Dave, I'm going to direct the question over to you and how the local landscape here complements everything that you're doing with Polar Bears International.
Interesting question. I mean, the local landscape is, that's where the polar bears live. Amazing, how does it complement what I'm doing with Polar Bears International? I think that's where we operate on the local land, locally. We don't have to travel to the other end of the Arctic to do what we're doing. We do that right here, so that land really serves us very well, just the way it is, just right here.
Absolutely. And one thing that we've been talking about in this theme of science near and far is exactly what you said, where we have this local opportunity and then how we expand that to have some global input and global knowledge and perspective as well. So Arif, you're coming to us from an educational perspective as well. Mm-hmm. Fun fact about Arif, that he was teaching here for a couple of years before he came into this role as science instructional coach too. So you really are both a local expert and you have the broad view as well. And how do these all play together from an educational standpoint?
No, that's a really good question. So this is almost coming from our perspective because we've been working together for quite a few years. I'd like to consider myself a local expert, but I am far from. I only lived here a couple of years. However, I did get a chance to work closely with PBI and the CNSC and Parks Canada and Manitoba Conservation from a teaching perspective. And that provided a lot of exposure and it really opens your eyes to the effects of climate change. That's one of the largest topics that we began to address in education at least, because that's such a hot topic to all of us. But as a science coach, we do our best to work closely with organizations who are even more so experts so that students have the exposure to those careers like you guys to see that, oh, this is what we can do if we move to Churchill. We can work at the Churchill Marine Observatory and do some studies there, work with PBI and learn more about polar bears, or become a teacher and work with more students.
Well, that's the best part, right?
I guess, yeah.
Okay. So we do have a couple more shout outs from schools who have tuned in. We have a big hello from Lynn Lake. Hello, Lynn Lake. Nicole Lansdowne, grade 8 class. We've got a kindergarten grade 1 class from Benito School from Swan Valley School Division. We have a hello from HS Paul School in Winnipeg. And we have our first question for the panel. And Dave and KT, this question is for you. Where can we get that Tundra Buggy Lego kit?
Not this one.
That's my
Not a
question.
chance.
Trust me, we all have our eyes on that Lego kit.
Yeah, so here's the deal. We need your help to make this Lego kit a Lego kit that you can actually buy and put together on your own. So this Tundra Buggy Lego was actually built by our staff member. Her daughter and her partner wanted a cool project during the pandemic. They were so they decided they were gonna try to figure out how to build Lego Buggy One. It took over 1,000 hours of their time to get all the pieces, put it all together, and build it. And Caleb submitted the Lego to lego.com. And we now have to get 10,000 votes. And if we get 10,000 votes, then Buggy One becomes an official Lego that anyone could purchase and buy. So the links are all over our website and social media. Go to polarbearsinternational.org and help us get 10,000 votes so that Buggy One can become a Lego.
How many votes do you have so far?
We have over 1,000, I think.
Oh,
Good.
Yeah.
Nice.
So tune into the Polar Bear Cam, vote for Lego Buggy One. I don't know if we have a few minutes. Maybe Dave could tell you some of his favorite parts about the Lego.
Absolutely, showcase it if you can.
It's super cool. I mean, I don't know if Lego is the best or Star Wars is the best, but Lego is currently my favorite thing. Not only is it it looks like a buggy for anyone who's been on a buggy, but just the features just exactly in the right spot, the little gates that open on the back, the steps down, and it falls off as well.
It's still Lego.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna leave that up for now. See, authentic, falls off, yeah, there you go. And we don't usually ride the roof as staff, although that would be cool. And this roof just lifts off, it's got a couple of little panels. And inside these buggies, inside Buggy One, we've got a little bathroom, it's even got a little toilet in there, it's got a little closet. The drawers underneath the bunk beds open. It's got a stove, so that buggy is heated with a propane stove, as well as other heat sources.
The coolest thing about the stove is, for real, we make pizzas on it.
Right? Then the little floor panel opens up and it's got Buggy One's battery supply in there. And the antenna so we can broadcast live from the tundra. But it's super cool. And yeah, I voted. I want one.
So thanks for helping us get votes for Lego Buggy One.
Yes, please, because we all want to put in our orders, that's for sure.
And my biggest disappointment of the week was that this came fully assembled.
Oh, you put it together
Take it
yourself.
apart, put it back together.
I wanted to put it together. So now I have to buy one to put one together. Right?
Definitely,
So,
definitely.
I'm gonna
With
put Kiki
scaled
there.
buggy drivers, right, to scale. All right, we have a kindergarten grade 1 Benito school class wants to know about the skull on the desk and more about the skull that you have in front of you.
Sure. Well, the coolest thing probably about the skull is that it's perfectly made for grabbing a seal and pulling it out of the hole in the ice onto the surface of the frozen ocean. But polar bear skulls, polar bears are perfectly adapted to a life on sea ice. Everything about the polar bear is made for the cold, made for the ice and snow. You can see these big teeth up here. Those are made for grabbing blubbery, fatty seals and pulling them out of the water. It doesn't have a lot of teeth here. Like some other skulls you might see, we call that the diastema, that's that gap. And then also, a very cool thing about the skull is the nose. And you can see there's tons of texture and detail in that nose cavity, and polar bears have an amazing sense of smell. Their sight's okay, their hearing's pretty good, but the nose of a polar bear is really how they find their food and navigate through lots of their environment. Not to mention just how big they are. So, very cool. Polar bears, from the bones to the fur, they're perfectly adapted to a life on sea ice.
Massive, powerful jaw bones. I mean, you can almost get your hands through here. That's how big those muscles are on the jaw bones. These gigantic, powerful jaws, for sure.
Excellent, thank you very much. We have a question that expands on one of your comments, Arif, but I'd like to bring it to the panel here. The question comes from Brett Dow's classroom. Can you expand on some of the opportunities and challenges that come with climate change, specifically in Manitoba and Churchill? Faye, I think I'm going to let you speak to that first. You talked about a few of the initiatives that are happening within the University of Manitoba. If you can explain maybe one or two opportunities and or challenges that are coming in terms of our research and studying and awareness, that would be quite good.
Absolutely, that's a great question. So very often when we talk about climate change, especially people paying attention to media, very often we hear all this kind of a depressing news, right? A lot of things are kind of not what we were hoping for. But on the other hand, we need to be aware that with climate change, it does open new opportunities, right? Humans, like polar bears, we are adapted very well. The evolution, and we tend to adjust our behavior, so there are opportunities associated with climate change. If we think about Manitoba, of course, with climate change, for example, we start to see the opening right here, the bay, the sea ice condition is such that the bay is opening earlier in the season, and the open water season extends longer. So that, of course, provides the opportunity for activities such as shipping. So some of, again, back to my earlier point is Manitoba, we are a maritime province, and very often we forget about it. But with this Hudson Bay, with the water become more open, we start to see that a lot more marine transportation could occur. And Churchill is actually at the entry point of something called Arctic Bridge. That Arctic Bridge, of course, is not a real bridge, but it's this shipping-based bridge that collects Churchill through Hudson Bay, through Hudson Strait, all the way to Russia in the east, and all the way north to the North Pole area. So that alone provides this great opportunity for economic opportunities, for development. And so with this, it opens a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities to better plan for this, right? We're not that kind of a province before, but now we are. We're on the verge of becoming a major kind of maritime province. So for people, for kids or people in the province, we start to realize that is an opportunity. But as David mentioned, with this climate change opportunities, you also have these challenges that we have to deal with. Oil spill is one of them, right? And the news that the same increase in shipping in the Arctic, where you suddenly bring a large number of tourism. Of course, tourism is very good for a town like Churchill, but when we suddenly see a large number of tourists coming to a smaller town, that could present a challenge that's not that easy to address. So those are kind of the challenges, opportunities that we start to study. The bottom line is we know that we want to slow down climate change, climate warming, but in the meantime, the climate warming trend is going to continue in the foreseeable future. And as a society, as a species, we need to learn, we need to adapt, and we need to address some of the issues so that the real benefit can be realized to our province, to the country, to the world, to everyone.
Thank you. Debbie, I'm wondering if you have anything along the same lines to add, but I'm asking more about your work is going to be working in a system studying contaminants using the local resources here to emulate what would happen in a larger scale situation. Are there opportunities with studying research in this way, and are there any challenges that you might face with studying oil spills and other contaminants in this way?
I'm sorry, can you ask?
Yeah, absolutely.
One more time.
I'll ask again.
Yeah.
So the original question was, can you expand on some opportunities and challenges that come with climate change? More specifically, in your research at the Marine Observatory,
Right.
what would be some opportunities, like opportunities of learning and research, and what might be some challenges that you might face in studying contaminants at a smaller scale and then translating them to a larger natural system?
Well, for at least here in Churchill, one thing that's kind of gone a little unmentioned is that we have a real connect to water systems in the south. Okay, so what's happening I don't know how many of you are canoeists. I canoe a lot, and so I live in Winnipeg, and so I canoe close to Winnipeg in the south. You can see the levels of the lake, of most of the lakes, have decreased quite a bit. This is due to our spring coming quite a bit sooner. It's a lot hotter, so there's a lot more evaporation. We don't have as much water in the lakes, and so, but that water system is also coming from the south and feeding into the north. So we get all of that water from Lake Winnipeg into Hudson Bay, where we mix freshwater and saltwater, ocean water, right here, right outside this window. And so, that input from freshwater is something that's changing as the climate changes, and how that's going to affect the bay itself, as well as how we can study some of those changes, as Faye described, here at CMO on a small scale or on a larger scale. So there's a lot of calculating those changes that are happening quite rapidly, as we can see in Manitoba, and kind of bringing that into a broader picture can be quite difficult, but I think just being here in Churchill, we have that opportunity to start.
Good, thank you, that's excellent. That's really good information, and I really like this question because it is about the opportunities that we can gain, in the reality of where our world and where our Earth is right now, as well as the challenges. Sometimes we tend to focus on the challenges only, but in an evolving, changing system, then we're looking at additional opportunities too. I do have a couple questions here. One question is, what is inside of the box container? But I don't know if we're quite there yet. So I'm going to go to a couple of these questions. We have one that is, what is the difference between the tundra and the Arctic? So with Churchill, are we considered the Arctic or the tundra? Dave or KT, do you have any information about that?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess the Arctic, depends on what you're studying. You could define it differently. You could define it north of the trees. You could define it where the tundra starts, or the area where the sea ice forms seasonally, or the north of the circle. So I guess Arctic could be used in various different ways. The tundra is more sort of defined. It's basically north of the tree lines, north of the trees in the northern hemisphere. So in Churchill, we kind of right at the edge of the trees kind of vanish, and sort of sometimes there's trees, sometimes there's not. The tree line doesn't know whether to end here or not. But we've got tundra, so tundra typically would be in this area, just low-lying vegetation on the ground, whereas the Arctic could encompass the tundra if you needed to, depending on your definition of Arctic.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that really clarifies. We have a question here. How do people start to connect with local resources? And Arif, I'm going to direct that question to you. From a classroom or from a school standpoint, if somebody is wanting to get out into their own local area and start connecting and start getting out onto the land a bit more, what's a good starting point for that?
Yeah, so it often depends on the community in which you live and how well informed you are about its resources. So if you are a teacher, for instance, or you're a student and you have a teacher, then you want to connect with agencies or organizations that are involved in whatever you're interested in. Often those agencies can look like ecological agencies or research institutions. So University of Manitoba has a ton of resources for education, colleges, and then other areas like conservation areas are really good, like Wapaska National Park up here. Or if you're in Winnipeg, then you're looking at things like Oak Marsh and Fort White Alive. So it all depends on what your interests are, but connect with organizations that share your interests. Connect with research institutions and think tanks as well, for teachers. You guys know what I mean. And also with conservation areas, because that's a really hot topic.
That's fantastic advice. And it lends well to one of our partners who is actually out on a tundra buggy today and couldn't be here in person. We have CJ joining us from Winnipeg Park Zoo. Yesterday we went out to the Churchill Northern Studies Center and we filmed a clip with CJ and a little bit of her advice on how to get started and how to connect to what the Winnipeg Park Zoo does both locally and then larger. So they serve all of Manitoba for sure, if not nationwide and beyond. A fun fact about CJ is she is one of the stars of the Arctic Vet series that has been streaming, and she just has extensive knowledge about getting out onto the land and using our resources in a way to study and educate ourselves. So we're going to go to the clip of CJ and hear what she has to say. Hi everyone, we're here with CJ from the Winnipeg Park Zoo. Welcome CJ, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you.
Good, so you are an expert on land-based everything. You use the land both personally, professionally, with research and all sorts of initiatives. Can you explain a little bit about what you do?
So I'm a wildlife biologist by training, and I come up to Churchill pretty much every year, sometimes multiple times a year, and I am basically observing the world around me. So we use the land to understand the animals and how they're kind of living off the land, and we're understanding what they're doing by watching them and just seeing them in their element and trying to understand them a lot better than we've understood them in the past.
Do you have any expert advice for teachers or students who are wanting to use their own local area and how to get out on the land and have some success in their science initiatives?
I think one of the first steps that you should do is really talk to the people that are living in the area. So for me, I live in Winnipeg. I come up to Churchill to study. It's really important for me to invest time and energy in understanding the people that live here and the community, and they can offer a lot of really good tips on how to do things. So an example is the harbor seal study that we're doing right now in the Churchill River. A lot of what we know about the seals is from us coming over and over, but also just talking to people to understand where are those seals, what are they doing, how are they using the area, and that makes our science better because we're kind of taking that all together and putting it together to make a project out of it, and hopefully what we learn from this project is actually going to help people in this area as well. So I think number one tip is talking to the people from the area, learning what you can, and putting that into whatever work you can do.
That's fantastic. What are some initiatives or projects that you and the Winnipeg Park Zoo have on the go right now?
I think one of the most exciting projects that we're working on in the Churchill area right now is what we call Beluga Bits. It's a citizen science project that really is open to anyone in the world. And they can look at photos and videos of beluga that are underwater in the Churchill River estuary and help us understand belugas better. So we're looking at things like their age, their sex, if there's different kinds of marks where we can actually use photos to ID those individuals that are returning year after year. It's a really cool project because everyone can look at a photo. As long as you have internet, basically, you can help us on this project.
Great, and that's a great way for our classrooms to get involved, both locally and from a global perspective. Is there anything else that we might be missing, CJ?
Probably, but I can't think of it right now.
All right, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Churchill regular, so are all of our folks from Winnipeg Park Zoo, and having a great day out on the buggy today. The real thing, although the Lego one, I'm pretty happy to be here with this one as well. Our last question, if you had a bit more to contribute to that, all about getting in tune with your local resources and connecting.
Yeah, some of those local resources don't always have to look like institutions, especially if you're in a smaller community. Definitely reach out to knowledge keepers and elders in your area as well. You'll find that the Indigenous connections are full of a wealth of information about the land. They'll know the land better than just about anyone there. And that can include a lot of people who study it and research it. Also connect with other schools and other classes who are in your area.
We had a comment about that this morning where our student participants were using our student panel as part of their own research.
Right.
So just having those conversations with people from different areas of the province, different areas of the world, that has such value in it, and that's an amazing contribution to figuring out what our province is all about here. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to open up that question to all of our panelists. I'm not too sure who would like to start or jump in on this one. But do you have any advice of, you do such amazing world-renowned work and studying and observations. in multiple areas of science. If somebody's looking from their home community and wants to get started with some land-based science, what would be some interesting first steps or some ways that we could encourage that? Yeah, go ahead, Faye.
Yeah, I can start. Definitely, I fully agree with what Arif just was saying. The first resource is always your local knowledge keeper. And speaking from university, right? The university system tends to be, in the past, it tends to be all what we call Western science, but increasingly we realize, especially when we talk about northern environment, the Arctic, we realize the existence, the value of multiple knowledge system. So always start from there, and because even for the university, we start to really try to bridge that. But on the other hand, in terms of getting to the local land, to do the study, observation, to keep that the curiosity going, that is really the key part. And the thing is, at this time, there are a lot of resources locally, and of course, all of you are very good with internet. You start to see a lot of resources there. But and gradually, once you start to formulate some kind of idea, science fair projects, those are really good opportunity to participate, and never shy to contact any kind of individual researchers, experts in your community, or even through internet, through University of Manitoba or other universities, for that matter. And many of us would be more than happy to get involved and to provide resources to support you in one way or the other. So yes, definitely keep getting your hand dirty and get to the environment and to really see firsthand how different components of the nature connect and to see the changes. And the thing is, in many northern part of the planet, even for a short span of a few years, you do notice changes. So I encourage you, from wherever you are, to pay attention to things around you and to see how things change, timing, season, and new birds and new flowers, new plants, and yeah, those are definitely happening, and keep that curiosity going. Of course, at one point, we hope we'll see you at the university, and we keep studying together.
So all I'm hearing is that open invitation to just reach out and connect with you folks as well, because this is a connection that you're making here today too. So that's a great starting point. Debbie, how about from your perspective? You know, you're studying some very specific elements of aquatic marine life and ecosystems. How would you advise a community who, you know, to study their local water samples, or what would be a good starting point?
Well, I think the best would be to approach your teacher, because they probably have some really good resources. I know the Frontier School Division has worked on many research science kits that they have already established, they're phenomenal. And then come up with some ideas. But if you want to look at water, you could, if you've got two different water streams, you could look at how many, suspended, what's floating in the water. You could collect to see if there's just different fish in different waters, and then you could maybe see as to why they're different. So whatever it is that you're curious about, you could just Google it. There's lots of resources there. You can contact us at the University of Manitoba Center for Earth Observation Science. We have a lot of resources that are available. So yeah, just ask questions, be curious, and eventually you'll try to solve those problems, and hopefully it'll lead you to maybe research that some of us here are already doing.
I really like your point, Debbie, of go with what's making you curious. And when you look at getting involved with your local resources and your globally available resources, letting that student curiosity and your teacher curiosity guide you. That's something we just talked about in a session that we ran for our teachers the other day, is getting excited, letting that curiosity guide where you're going. Another thought that came to mind is, Debbie, you're a featured expert on panels such as Arctic Science Day. And more, right? It keeps going through a partnership with Fort White Alive. So if you look up Fort White Alive and you just get on their information sheet, that you're going to be getting information about those opportunities that come up, with hands-on sessions, kits that are sent out to you, that you can learn right along with the scientists and other classrooms and apply it to your local community. All right, so similar question coming your way, either Dave or Katie, if you would like to start. How would you advise just starting to get out on the land and getting to know the area? This is a great question actually for either one of you, because at some point, like you weren't raised in Churchill, but at some point you came here and everything was brand new. So how do you get started with that? Dave, maybe I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I came to Churchill, I was interested in the polar regions, in the Arctic, and Churchill was close by, fairly easy to get to, so I just thought it was a great starting point. I had ideas of what I wanted to do. I wanted to guide. So how do I guide? So I came to Churchill as a tourist and visited all of the different tour operators and inquired about tours, and then did a few tours, and then, okay, so how do I apply for a job? So then I reached out with my resume, applied for a few companies, and I got into Churchill that way. If that didn't work, I would have likely found some sort of other way to get in. But reaching out to any of the companies that are here, if you have a particular interest, and I think even as a gateway into Churchill, if you wanted to work in science in Churchill, you could even start off doing some of the supporting roles, which are sort of also crucial to Churchill, sort of whether it's working in hospitality, whether it's working in sort of bus driving, or sort of any sort of logistical work, which is also a good sort of gateway into these communities. But yeah, lots of opportunities, even with Polar Bears International.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would echo that. I think for us, people that can do multiple tasks are super great to have around. If you can do really great research, but also be really good at driving the bus, or taking people out on the land, or cooking dinner and helping clean up, like those are the people we invite back, because it's not all science. It takes a lot to do this work, and every role is critically important. There's lots of internship opportunities and volunteer opportunities, and I would look for those. And then I would just encourage you, wherever you are, to build a connection to the land around you and learn how to be out safely. Ask for mentorship, ask what is acceptable and appropriate, learn how to be safe, and then spend a lot of time out, because you'll be so surprised at how much you learn by just being out often and developing this knowledge of place that's only learned through experience. And I think that's super valuable for your professional career and for your own life and your own love of the natural world.
Absolutely, thank you. That was very well said. We have a couple of questions that have come in. We have Connor in Lynn Lake would like to know how tall and how heavy polar bears are.
How tall, how heavy? Well,
Yes.
I guess the tallest of the males, if you measure them from their shoulder, about sort of, maybe 5 feet, so about 1.5 meters tall. And just, I know it might not be much of a sense of scale, but I'm 6 feet, 6 foot tall.
I'm 5
So-
feet.
So
There we go.
So somewhere in this level is where the shoulder of a large male polar bear would be. If they're standing up on their hind legs, I mean, even sort of taller than this, you're looking at sort of the better part of 10 feet from paws on the ground to paws up high. And the paws up high are just kind of where their nose is, somewhere up there. So about 9 to 10 feet for a large bear. As far as weight goes, it would also depend on the time of year and which region, but sort of ballpark in this region, sort of 1,000 to 1,200 pounds, so about 500 to 600 kilos for a very large male. And so it's pretty big. The females tend to be about, a little bit less than half that size. So a large male might be 500 kilograms, 1,000 pounds. A large female might be sort of 400 or 500. Yeah, they're
Excellent.
pretty big, pretty heavy,
Thank you.
pretty solid pieces.
In schools, we like to use non-standard units of measure, so you two are perfect for that. At 5 feet and 6 feet, that's a perfect analogy. Thank you. We have another question, and this question is for us as people, because we come to Churchill sometimes, and you have extended stays in Churchill yourselves, and sometimes, we're in different places of the world. The question is, how's our diet different when you're staying in the Arctic as maybe when you're times of staying in more southern areas? And are you more aware of how you eat or what you're purchasing and so on? So that's open for any of us if anybody has a comment about that.
I can take that one because in addition to helping run our research projects and drive our buggy, I also order all of our food. So, Churchill is fairly connected to the south by the rail line, so you can get a lot of things in Churchill. They're still more expensive than they are in the south, but not as expensive as farther north in Nunavut, where you might have to fly food in on a plane. So, in Churchill, you just kind of have to be a little bit more flexible. It's a lot harder to get fruits and vegetables. Often they'll freeze on their way up on the train, and so they're bad by the time they get here. So it just might not be exactly the diet that you eat at home. And farther north, it's super important for people to have at least a partial sustainable livelihood that involves hunting and gathering and living from the land, because otherwise their only options are eating packaged foods that are flown up in airplanes. So Churchill's kind of in this middle ground. Farther north is quite different, and I think the most important thing is just to be flexible and roll with the punches up here.
Yeah, I eat a lot of wild foods, a lot of wild game, a lot of berries. My freezer is full, right to the top of berries this year. We had a great berry year. But I do crave, like when I don't crave food. When I leave Churchill, I crave the Asian foods. I really crave different food. So I've got a couple of favorite Vietnamese places in Winnipeg, which I sort of migrate to the instant I get on the plane.
That's your go-to. Not McDonald's.
Not McDonald's, no.
All right.
Although that's a big thing. A lot of people, we don't have any chain restaurants here in Churchill, so a lot of people, McDonald's is quite a novelty.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, when I was living here, your diet doesn't change a whole lot unless you really try to not spend money at the grocery store because it's expensive. So wild game is always nice, and berry picking is amazing. But it also encourages you to sort of grow your own indoors. So one initiative that we're running throughout Frontier, for instance, is the Tower Garden Project. So vertical farming, in order for students and classes to grow food and vegetables, fruits and vegetables within the inside. So you can have it in a basement, in the dark, and it'll grow because it's got a light system. So it encourages healthy eating and healthy diets as well. And we mentioned McDonald's. So a friend of mine here, every time I went back to Winnipeg and came back here, I had to bring him a Big Mac. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. It's Big Macs and the chicken nuggets were the staple, and he would do anything for them. I don't think I'd do anything for a Big Mac, but it is delicious. Yeah.
Thank you. Debbie, go ahead.
Oh, I just was going to comment. I know that there's the container greens that are in Churchill. Could you tell them what they're doing? Because
I can expand on that a bit.
Yeah.
So about 5 years ago or so, I discovered that there was a lack of vegetables, good vegetables and affordable vegetables really in Churchill. And so at the time, the Churchill Northern Studies Center had a director by the name of Grant McNeil, who ended up starting a new initiative called Rocket Greens.
Yes.
And this was the beginnings of a greenhouse about the same time that I had a tower garden in the science class. And so it was very interesting to see it begin to really grow out of control. And it was very accessible for people living here to get vegetables from a greenhouse. And so now it's very popular.
Yeah.
It's a great name.
It is.
The Rocket.
Exactly, because CNSC was on our old.
There's a rocket launch.
Yeah.
On the rocket range.
Yeah.
That's right. There's a question here that I would like to tackle myself. The question is, how can we as communities use the land around us as a tool to teach our students the value of fighting climate change, and how can we show them that they can make a difference to this world? And what I would say is that's exactly how. The suggestions that we gathered here about starting small, starting local, becoming in tune with the land around you, studying, observing, learning from locals, learning from knowledge keepers, all of that is exactly how you become an aware person, and that's exactly how you do make a larger difference in the world. So no matter where your path goes, you still have that as part of who you are and the choices and decisions that you make moving forward. And I think that is an incredibly important part. And I think that's a great question, because sometimes we do feel like we need to make these huge grand gestures, which can be part of it. We need that too. But also that starting local and really being in tune with where you are and who you are is a major component of that as well. We have a couple of artifacts here that I would like to give an opportunity to showcase. So Arif, you brought something, and then KT, you have a mystery box over there. So Arif, we'll start with you.
Oh, I'll be quick. Yeah, Katie's looks a lot more exciting. This is a little toy I decided to bring. I'm sure you all know what this is. It's got 4 arms, 4 sets of props, 4 motors, a camera on the front, which can move around quite a bit with a lens, and a bunch of sensors on the bottom and the front as well. It's got a light system and a calibration system. So this is a drone. Nobody's seen one before. This is a Mavic Mini 2 at 249 grams. You do need a license to fly, anything over 250 grams, and she's wonderful. I haven't named her yet though, so I need some suggestions on what to name her, and some clues into naming her. She'll be used for certain population studies, for seals and belugas. So we'll be working closely with the zoo and CEOS in the hopes of gaining more data using aerial imagery with the drone to help them in their research studies. So we need a name for this drone, and connect it to seals and belugas or Churchill if you can. We'll listen to some suggestions when you can.
All right, yeah, we want those suggestions coming in now. We want to see what your ideas are. All right, KT, and the mystery box.
Very cool. Well, that's a great tie to technology, because we're hoping someday drones might help us learn about polar bears. We've been trying to do some test studies there. We haven't quite figured it out yet. This box is kind of just what it looks like. It's a big fancy box, but it does have a very cool hole on the front here, and it's got some brackets to mount legs on it. And this box is a homemade camera to study polar bear mothers when they emerge from their dens with their cubs. So it's pretty cool. It's a little bit of a mess on the inside. It got shipped back and it got kind of tossed around by the elements after it did its job. But on the inside of this thing, we have a car battery that goes in here. It's not in there right now. Then we have a tiny little computer and a camera lens, and it points out this hole right up here. And then there is an inverter that connects outside to a solar panel. So these were invented by one of our staff members. He's been inventing them and building them and making them better and better and better over the course of about 10, 15 years. He just dreamed it up, and he thought, what a cool way to study polar bears. And the extra special thing about it is we don't have to disturb the polar bears at all, and that's our goal. So what we do is we take these cameras. We used to do it in Alaska, and now we do it in Svalbard, Norway. And we have some locations of where polar bears den, where females are denning with their cubs. And we get the GPS location, and we look at it on a map, and we make a plan of how to travel there safely. And then we go and we put these things out. We make sure we're really quiet, and we don't actually go close to the den. We have a kilometer buffer around the den, so we get dropped off either with snowmobiles or a helicopter, and then we ski in with a sleigh to the den, locate it as best we can. It's under the snow, so you don't actually know exactly where it is. And we set one of these things up, and we focus the camera, we close the lid, we put the solar panel out, and we leave. And it films the female with her cubs when she comes out of the den and captures footage, and that's used for multiple different studies on denning polar bears. And then other researchers just pick it up when they happen to be in the area a few months later. So, pretty cool stuff right there. Technology is a pretty cool way to do research. So if you like video games and technology and that sort of thing, research might be for you.
I really like that because one of the approaches to science education that we tend to promote is our design process. So your colleague saw a need and really worked hard to figure something out, imagine what it would be to test, to retest, to trial, over and over again, like you said, over the course of 10 to 15 years, and stuck with it to fill that need. And look at the value that it now has for your research and your studies.
And it's super important with research to do it over long periods of time, right? Because then you can see the trends in what's changing. So what's extra cool about this project is that we have been doing it for about 15 years, and you can see the trends and how things change over time.
Mm-hmm. And that lies exactly in with what you were mentioning earlier about how you start to observe, and even over a short period of time, you can start to notice changes in your local area. You can start to notice the patterns, what's different, what's upcoming, what doesn't happen anymore, and so on. And I would say that that's absolutely true. Even from my younger years living in Winnipeg, I certainly noticed differences of weather patterns. And you can start to really notice in a short amount of time. We have just a couple questions left. We do have one name suggestion.
Oh, yeah.
But it's only one.
Okay.
So we need some more.
Does it have anything to do with my head? I always get head stuff.
Maybe.
I knew it.
The suggestion is Big Bertha.
Well, it's pretty close.
That's a pretty good one.
I like Bertha.
Yeah.
I named my old truck Bertha. So, and I lost that old Bertha, so I need a new Bertha.
So that might be working.
That's-
All right, more suggestions.
It's a good one.
Yeah,
Thank
bring
you.
them in, folks. I also have a question for our virtual audience. Is what would you like to take as a next step to getting involved in your local resources, and also what would you like to take as a next step to getting involved in global opportunities as well? So we do have a couple questions here, but I have one from myself first. So the one from myself first is, I've heard this term used a couple times today, that you are, instead of using the term climate change, you're using the term climate warming. So is there a distinct difference there, and is that the vocabulary that we should be using now in schools and in our programming? Yeah, go ahead, KT, and then we'll go to Faye.
So there has been kind of a movement in the social science world to use climate warming because change is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Change happens all the time. We are constantly adapting to change as a human species. And the change that is happening to the climate is change, but that change is warming. So it's a more specific term that is less vague and implies the seriousness of the situation at hand.
Good, thank you. Faye, you had something to add?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a debate for, I can't even say for how long it's been there from academic world, right? And as university profs, as some of you know, we love to debate on those things on these terms. And Kelly is absolutely right that the climate change is a more generic term that refers to the changing, the constant changing. When we talk about climate change, we know climate is changing all the time, but primarily we refer to those periods where we see abrupt, dramatic changes, whether it's warming or cooling, right? So that is a more generic term, everyone agrees on it. And climate warming, we use that term, at least in my context, in my writings, we try to use that term to describe specific regions and specific context. So it's important to realize that climate is such a thing that different regions of the planet may experience it differently. So even though we're absolutely right, the dominating feature right now is climate warming, we do have locations on this planet where climate is actually either stable or is actually cooling. And that's just how the system is doing, right? But that does not override the overwhelmingly warming feature. So some of you probably paid attention just a few days ago with the news that in Antarctica, for example, right now they're seeing way more sea ice growing, while in the north we see constant dramatic decrease of sea ice. So that's really whether we say climate warming or climate changing, for most audience, we're meaning exactly the same thing, but it's really, the subtle difference is the messaging, is where some people they want to make sure that they don't overlook the other part of the planet. Even Hudson Bay, where this big bay here, the western part of the bay and eastern part of the bay, they're responding to climate change very differently. So those are the things that very often get into the academic term where we debate, where we want to make sure that whatever term we use that's not misunderstood. That is, but I would say in most cases that we talk about these two terms, they refer, at least for the current time, they refer exactly the same thing.
Good, thank you. Yeah.
This might be slightly off topic, although I do agree that it does bridge the terms global warming and climate change, and I'm sure as long as your intentions on its use are correct and in line with the data, then absolutely that's something that you can change. I just wish you guys were all here, because if we look behind us, the waves are just crashing into the rock, the shores, like almost violently, but in the most beautiful way. And it's all just pure salt water. And eventually, what's so interesting about Churchill is its seasonal change. And over time, we're going to see that entire bay freeze and ice, and all the bears that we've been working so hard to understand are going to start to move out to that ice and feed on those seals that we want to know more about too. So really wish you guys are here with us.
Well, hopefully that's not too far off, right? We have one more name suggestion, and then I have one more question. The name suggestion, I am disappointed I didn't think of this myself.
Okay.
It's a good one. I'm going to hype you guys up for it.
Better than Bertha?
I don't know.
What's better than
I
Bertha?
think we kind of need to find a way to use them both.
Okay.
Because I really like Bertha, but I also really like this one. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Dory. Because
Ooh.
Dory talks to whales, and so will the drone.
Oh, that's a good
That's
one.
good.
I
Right?
like Dory
Yeah.
too.
Right?
Yeah.
Dory talks to whales.
It's a DJI too, so it's like a DJI Dory.
Okay, yeah, we'll figure it out.
I really like that one.
Yeah.
I think we've got a winner.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right, so folks, we're going to be wrapping things up shortly. I would like to kind of ball a couple of questions in one here. Debbie, I'm going to go to you first with this. It's kind of a multi-tiered question, but you can respond however suits you. The questions are, what kind of programs can I enroll in at university if you want to study along these lines? How do I get involved? Are there research opportunities available in your organization? So it's kind of multifaceted, and then I'll be bringing that same question for you guys at PBI as well.
Okay, so I would say when you start university, or if you're looking to go to university or college, please keep an open mind, because you might not know the opportunities that are out there. So a little experience of myself, I finished high school, I was going to be a dentist. This is what I wanted to do. I started taking all my first year science courses, but I really liked chemistry. And so then I focused on chemistry, and I had a lot of fun making new compounds. So I thought, okay, well, maybe drug research was where I was going to go. And then one summer I got a job working with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, looking at pesticides and where they go in the environment in Miami, Manitoba. So a little farm town in Manitoba I would drive to, every 3 days, collect samples, and I just loved it. So that was it. My future was determined, and I, focused my career into that path. So starting university, I didn't have a lot of environmental chemistry type courses. There are more now. And so there's student advisors that you can talk to. There's a lot of open house days that faculty members, staff members will present at. So go to those, meet people, find out what they do, go to these open houses or the talks. Lots of people come in to give presentations from all different organizations, and just keep an open mind and see what you like, because there's lots of opportunities that you might not know about now.
I
That's
like
my
that, and I
advice.
like hearing everybody's journey of how they came to be where they are, because everybody's situation is so unique and so interesting. And in most cases, it's never what you thought it would be at the start. And I think all of us fit into that as well.
Yeah.
So from PBI's perspective, how can people get involved? What courses? How should they be studying, and so on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, gosh, of course, science is super cool, and if you're really interested in following biology or going into that kind of a track, there's opportunities there. But I would also say there's opportunities to engage with polar bear conservation and research kind of in anything that you're interested in. For example, I went to school for photography, and another person that works for us that's on our science team also went to school for photography. So, you know, if you're interested in communications or photography or storytelling with cameras, and then also if you're somebody that like loves numbers and spreadsheets or like putting on events, there's ways to get involved in like research logistics that are super important. So how are we going to gather the data? How is all that going to work? So I think just follow your curiosity, like what Debbie said. Try tons of different stuff, because you often, something will grab you that you didn't quite expect will. And at Polar Bears International, we're trying to develop more internship opportunities. We have a student program here in Churchill where we have a student interns from the high school that help out in the summer on the beluga boat. So that's something that's really cool. And yeah, reach out to local NGOs and folks around you and just see what opportunities might be there. Do you want to add anything, Dave?
The pretty comprehensive wrap up there, Katie. I think also, you know, to get some, not just experience, but maybe get a few credentials. So the beluga boat, you know, get a boating license. If you want to drive like the buses or the transportation, maybe a little bus license or something. So get some credentials as well and get on up here.
Mm-hmm. I think those are both really important points to make, that you have different types of paths that you can take, different types of credentials, different interest areas, you know, and they're all valid and they're all different ways to get to where you want to be going with this. Any thoughts to add, Arif, to wrap things up from the education side?
Yeah, very quickly, briefly, I couldn't agree more with Debbie and PBI in terms of what you're curious about. What are your interests? The careers that will fall ahead of you will open up in ways that you've never imagined. I never imagined myself to be a science teacher, and here I am as a science coach, trying to connect you to career opportunities. You'd be surprised at how much opportunity is out there when you look for it. And if you just give those agencies a call and you know, take that little bit of action, you're going to find that whatever you're interested in is going to line up perfectly for you. One thing that we are really pushing is aerial photography and videography. There's a lot of certificates that are being offered out there for students. If you want to fly, then please contact Volatus or get your license and work with as a drone operator. There's a ton of opportunity to be a drone pilot in Manitoba and across the world. And we all know that other institutions are looking for pilots like you. So come on down.
So folks, I'd like to take the opportunity to again thank all of our panel members. Thank you, that's quite amazing. But also all of you for participating today and having that interest in science near and far. Really the overall message is starting local, making sure you're engaging your local knowledge keepers and just getting out on the land, observing, enjoying, and being a part of that. But also don't forget, you have a whole slew of people here who are cheering you on and who want to help support you, provide you opportunities, and partner in many different ways. So please feel free to reach out at any time. Stay tuned, we're going to, throughout the year, offer some more opportunities and some more streaming events. So make sure that you join us for those as well. Otherwise, have a great afternoon. Thank you again, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.